Hey there everyone, welcome back to Switchstars and welcome to a bit of a strange one, because I originally played this game, wrote the script for it and recorded the voiceover, and then I discovered something that completely negated all the work that I'd done. You see, I usually do my research on games like this to see if they've released on other platforms, and whilst looking into Misdie into the game, I discovered another game, simply titled Misdie, released on Steam by a Japanese developer called iHasto. And after playing through this Switch version, I was left a little bit confused as to why a lot of the game's content had been cut, considering that both the Switch and Steam versions contain near identical screenshots for some of the segments of the game. I just passed it off as being a lazy port, with the developer cutting content to save time or something. However, just before I was about to start editing this video, I took one last look and discovered that developer DEVS Games has ripped off several other popular games, and after looking a little closer, I discovered that another game published by them, titled Alehouse Tavern Simulator, was in fact developed by Cool Devs. This is the same Cool Devs who not so long ago stole a game called the Backrooms 1998 from another developer and published it on Switch and PlayStation, so yet again it appears as though Misdie into the game has literally been ripped from the Steam version of the game, not only in terms of its basic gameplay and overarching narrative, but right down to the very assets used in the Steam game. And I can only assume that, like with the Backrooms 1998, they downloaded it, extracted a lot of the assets, and then replaced what they couldn't steal with their own assets. Now I have no idea how it compares to the Steam version in terms of what content has been removed, but there does appear to be a lot of it missing. But once again, Cool Devs have straight up stolen another developer's game and claimed it for their own, name and all. And I think it's an absolute joke that Nintendo continue to let this shit happen and allow developers like Cool Devs to remain on the eShop and continue operating on the platform. Now I'm going to play out the review in full because the game itself isn't all that bad and it should give you some idea of what to expect from the Steam version. But under no circumstances should you purchase this game or support this developer or this publisher, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd spread the word on this one because these scummy little thieves deserve to get exactly what's coming to them. Without further ado though, on to the review. So I'm slightly ashamed to admit it, but I've played a fair few H games on the Switch, and so when I saw Misdie into the game appear on the eShop with its AI generated thumbnail and short skirt, stockings and suspender toting anime character, I wrongly assumed that this was just another sultry sleaze fest. But it is in fact a very surreal and somewhat unsettling walking simulator cum psychological horror game, and not at all what I was expecting. So let's dive into this quirky little game and see what's what, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Switch and Switch 2 content. So this is going to be a relatively short one as I really don't want to give anything away too much here in case you want to actually play the game. But Misdie into the game is essentially a psychological horror game in which you, the protagonist, are pulled into an unassuming mobile game and become trapped alongside its inhabitant Mita, a cutesy little anime girl. But all is not quite what it seems here, and you'll soon discover that the game hides a dark secret, and that Mita may not actually be there of her own accord either. The narrative of the game is deliberately obscure, and it's made even more obscure by the fact that the translation really isn't the best, with misspelt words and poorly formed sentences throughout, but it's simple enough that it can be followed through to its somewhat satisfying conclusion. And I say only somewhat, as it appears as though this Switch version is unfortunately a much abridged version of the Steam game, simply titled Misdie, which is a real shame in my opinion, as there looks to be a lot of additional content in the Steam version which for some reason has been removed here, and this would no doubt have fleshed out the narrative and gameplay, extending its playtime considerably and clarifying a lot of the obscure plot points. Now the opening of Misdie, or Misdie, begins from a first person perspective, as Alex, our protagonist, receives a message on his phone which appears to forcefully install an application, which appears to be some sort of live sim game where you interact with an anime character called Mita. And there are a couple of segments where you assist Mita cleaning up a room and feeding her, but after she expresses an interest in meeting Alex in person, he's then suddenly transported inside the game itself. From here on out, you get to explore Mita's apartment in first person, and whilst everything initially appears to be normal, bar the fact that you're now inside a video game, things quickly take a strange and unsettling turn, as you find yourself trapped here alongside Mita, who doesn't appear to be the only resident of this world. Gameplay is relatively straightforward in these segments though, and there are several days worth of time leaps between them. You're essentially given a set of objectives to complete, most of which involve finding specific items scattered throughout the apartment, and as I said, I won't spoil anything, but the juxtaposition between the cutesy anime aesthetics and the steadily growing sense of dread makes for an interesting experience with this one, and there are also a fair few jump scares to be had in it. Following your discovery of the truth behind Mita's incarceration, a transformation takes place with gameplay, and it then leans more heavily into the psychological horror elements, with influence taken from the likes of the Backrooms and, rather surprisingly, Silent Hill PT. Though admittedly the execution of these elements is nowhere near as impactful, and the PT-inspired looping corridor segment does overstay its welcome in my opinion. But there's a little bit of puzzling to be had here before the game wraps things up with a bit of a plot twist, leading to an overall satisfactory, yet somewhat abrupt, ending sequence. Now unfortunately, due to the amount of content cut, the playtime with this one runs a little short at around 35 to 40 minutes tops, but all in all, I have to say I was rather surprised at how engaging the game was. It did manage to catch me out a couple of times with the jump scares, and the atmosphere was tense and unsettling throughout, and the narrative was predictable but nonetheless enjoyable. Overall, a decent little game this one and worth a quick playthrough, though I really have no idea why the developer decided to cut back on the content of the game, because without it, there are still many questions left unanswered, and you're undoubtedly missing out on a large chunk of the gameplay here. That though is it for this review of Misdie into the game on Nintendo Switch. So let me know if you played the game and what you thought of it, and if you've also played the Steam version, let me know what we're missing out on here. But as always, thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more Switch and Switch 2 content, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.